Hi, this is Andrea Kane, and I'm here with you, HSC 114 Medical Terminology. We are still studying the Language of Medicine 12th edition by Davy Ellen Chabner, and this is week 15, which means it is the last week of lectures that you will have. And this is the end of how we're finishing off our book. So week 15, we will be covering chapters 21 and 22. And this first lecture is on chapter 21. The lecture is here for your knowledge and information. It is not required, but I do hope that you'll have a chance to study this information for your own personal benefit. If you are in an allied health program, you will definitely be taking a class from your profession's perspective on pharmacology. So I'm just going to skim through a few things here. And again, it's for your own personal benefit and knowledge. You will not be tested or quizzed on it. The second video, though, will be on chapter 22, which is psychiatry, and that you will have for your assignment and your quiz. So let's go ahead and get started. If you want to follow along with me, I'm in the textbook on page 824. Our chapter goals, if you we don't have any program learning outcomes or educational learning outcomes for this chapter, but the chapter goals in the book are that you learn about the subspecialty areas of pharmacology, make sure you are aware of the various routes and schedule of drug administration, look at the various classes of drugs and their primary actions and side effects, define medical terms, of course, using combining forms. Remember our equation, the root plus a combining vowel equals a combining form. And then you have prefixes and suffixes, and then we want to make sure we understand our medical terms in their proper contexts. So let's go ahead and get started. Drugs are medicines or substances that are used to prevent or treat a condition or disease, and these are obtained from various sources, plants, animals, and made in the labs. A lot of what they have discovered with plants and trees and things like that, they've gone back hundreds of years and found out what people used to use effectively to treat illness, and have found that they can sometimes find those substances now and turn those into drugs. So that's one of the ways that they've done that. When we were talking about the endocrine chapter, we talked about hormones. And animals have often been used to generate or create hormones that can then be used in humans in some cases. And then, of course, there are lab-created medications. There are some pharmacology professionals you may run across. A pharmacist is a PharmD. It's a doctorate in pharmacology. Then you may also run across an MD or a PhD that is called a pharmacologist. And some of the subspecialties in the pharmacology field are medicinal chemistry, molecular pharmacology, chemotherapy, and toxicology. And you may find, especially with pharmacologists, that they specialize in one of these areas. And occasionally PharmDs do as well. There are some biological effects of drugs. One term you need to be aware of is pharmacodynamics. This is the study of drugs' effects in the body. And then there's also pharmacokinetics, and that's the study of how the drug is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted. And remember, drugs are usually excreted through the urine. We studied that when we looked at the urinary system with the kidneys. So quick quiz, which term means below the skin? Below the skin. I know you know this because we've talked about it before. So break it down and find the one that means below the skin. All right. Each drug has three types of identifiers. They have a chemical name, which represents the exact chemical makeup. They have a generic name, which is the legal scientific name. And then they often have a brand or trademark name, trade name or brand name. That is the name that the drug manufacturer uses to market the drug. Some places that give you information about drug standards and references. The FDA's website is absolutely someplace that you can go and find out information about the whole process of how drugs are researched and developed and brought to market. There's also something called the United States Pharmacopoeia, and that is available that you can take a look at that. Most hospitals have a formulary, and if you have insurance, likely your insurance company has a drug formulary where they tell you what drugs they offer or that they will provide. They do this for financial reasons, and also to limit the options so that you don't have medication errors by having so many things that it's out of control. A tried and true long-term reference book that many people have used over the years for pharmacology and pharmacy information is the physician's desk reference, or the PDR. And you can go out and look at those. I think you can still buy those today, whether it's paper form or electronic form. When they were back in paper form, they were incredibly thick and heavy, but they had all sorts of information about all drugs. How are drugs administered? Well, they can be administered orally. That's where you swallow them, whether it's liquid or a pill you swallow. Sublingual, that's where it dissolves under the tongue. Rectal, which is inserted into the rectum, like a suppository or an enema. Parenteral, this is where you get your injections, whether that's intracavitary, intradermal, intramuscular, intrathecal, intravenous, or subcutaneous. Those are all parenteral ways of administering drugs. Inhalation is like an asthma inhaler. It's taking it directly from particles into the lungs. And then, of course, you have topical, where you're rubbing it on the skin, or you're using a patch. Most drugs are set up so that they have a specific receptor. And if you're looking in your book, this is top of page 828. So when a drug enters the body, it's trying to interact with a specific target or receptor. It crosses the cell membrane usually to reach its intracellular receptor, or it can react with a receptor on the cell's surface. And so you need to know the term receptor. That's the target. That's where the drug is targeting to hook up, to act, to do what it's going to do. When it comes to, and really quick, before I go into action and interaction of drugs in the body, in your book, it talks about the dose and the schedule. Make sure that you know those terms. Anything that's bolded in your book, you really want to know those terms. I mean, I know it's a little late in the day to be mentioning that, but just a reminder. So, action and interaction of the drugs. Typically, drugs can have a couple of different actions. They can totally not work, completely and utterly not work whatsoever. So that is one thing that a drug can do. It can completely fail to work. Then you get into how does it work when you have two drugs. So a drug can act and it cannot act. And if you have two drugs, how does it work? Well, you have what's called additive action. So you have drug A and drug B, and together, if you add the 10, let's use the example your book gives. If drug A gives a 10% tumor kill rate as a chemotherapeutic agent, and drug B gives a 20% tumor kill rate, if you use A and B together, theoretically, you would get 30% tumor kill rate. That's an additive action because you expect them both to work. Antagonistic is when one or both don't work as well together as what they should have. They don't get to that level of additive action. So let's say you give drug A and drug B, but you only get a 20% tumor kill rate instead of the 30% that you would have gotten with additive. That 20% is an antagonistic relationship because they didn't work well together. They didn't reach the expected level that they should have performed to if they were given individually. Synergistic is when those two work together, that it's not 30% that they have a tumor kill rate, but it's a 40 or 50% tumor kill rate. that the two work together and they're beyond an additive level to a synergistic level. And that's what that is. It also talks about in your book response, and then it moves on into tolerance. Tolerance is that sometimes the amount of the drug, the effects of it diminish as the treatment continues, and so you need more and more of that drug to produce the same effect. A good example would be like with opiates and with someone with chronic pain. When they start out on the opiates, they may be taking a small dose, and that may take their pain, and that may totally knock their pain out. But over time, their pain may come back at that same dose. And so there's the temptation to increase the dose to, again, take away the pain because the tolerance of the dose has decreased. So that's what that's all about there. And then talking about addiction, that's the physical and psychological dependence on and craving for a drug and the presence of clearly unpleasant effects when that drug or other agent, such as a narcotic, is stopped. And then it talks about controlled substances. These are opioids or narcotics that produce dependence and have the potential for abuse or addiction. Quick question. All right. What is the term that means the combination of two drugs is greater than the total effects of each drug by itself? We just covered this. It is not tolerance. It is not idiosyncrasy. Can you catch which other one it is? All right, I know you can do it. Drug toxicity. This is at the bottom of page 828. This is an unpleasant and potentially dangerous effect of a drug. And then it goes into some of what these are. For instance, it talks about idiosyncrasy, iatrogenic side effects, contraindications, and drug resistance. So I'm going to leave that for you in your book to take a look at, but they're essentially there. You need to know what those all mean. Classes of drugs, again, this is just for you to be aware of. So I'm not going to go over a lot of these. It gives you some examples in table 21-2 and 21-3 and 21-4 and 21-5 and 21-6 and 21-7 and 21-8 and 21-9 and 21-10 and 21-11. And that's between pages 829 and 839. So to learn more about each of these classes of drugs, I would definitely direct you there so that you can look at that information. And then here it's going to give you some cardiovascular drugs and some endocrine drugs. And we talked a little bit about the endocrine drugs when we were on that chapter, when you talk about the estrogens and androgens and that sort of, and the thyroid hormones, glucocorticoids, those types of things. GI drugs, again, you can think about the GI tract and what it might need or use. And then we're to vocabulary. And because this is not on your quiz or your assignment, I'm going to just flip through here really quickly. And again, it's just here for you to be knowledgeable about. Sort of gives you a jump ahead if you've got a pharmacology course coming up next semester for your program. So in that sense, this would be helpful. And let's see. I'm also going to probably fly through, we're combining forms. I'm going to fly through these as well. Some of these you've already had, but again, you're not going to be tested on them, so I'm not going to focus on these. But again, most of these you've already had in one form or another. And some prefixes, again, most of these you've already had. Abbreviations, again, not going to focus on this because you'll get it when it gets to your pharmacology course, but here's a good chance for you to study ahead. All right, quick quiz. Which term means preventing nausea and vomiting? Which type of medication drug class is going to prevent nausea and vomiting? It's definitely going to be anti-something. What is it going to be anti against? All right, that is it for chapter 21. I will be back momentarily with chapter 22 on psychiatry. Thanks.